Everything you experience is a reflection of what you allow. The moment you decide that bare minimum isn't enough, your behavior shifts, your focus sharpens, and doors begin to open. Life stops handing you leftovers and starts offering what matches your new level. Change what you tolerate, and you change what shows up. Standards don't just guide you, they build you. In a few moments, I will teach you how raising your standards transforms your mindset, your results, and your entire future. You don't get what you want, you get what you accept. You've been told to dream big, but dreaming alone never built a barn, never led a charge, never carved a future out of stone. You don't rise in life because of what you wish for, you rise because of what you refuse to tolerate. Your current reality isn't the result of your goals, it's the result of your standards. If you accept mediocrity, that's exactly what you'll get. If you allow excuses, they'll multiply like weeds in an untended field. What you allow in your day becomes the law of your life. The moment you raise the bar on your habits, on your effort, on your thinking, you begin to shift the direction of everything. But if you wait for things to change around you, you'll be waiting forever. Raise your standard and your energy changes. Raise your standard and your focus sharpens. Raise your standard and life starts to bend toward you, not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. Now picture this. A carpenter shows up late, cuts corners and shrugs it off. Another shows up early, sharpens every tool, and checks every angle twice. Which one builds a legacy? Ask yourself, what have you been tolerating? In your work, in your health, in your speech? You want a better life? Then stop allowing the old one to linger. Stop letting weakness win in silence. Nothing changes until your standard does. The world respects the person who respects themselves. The first test isn't out there, it's in here. A person who demands excellence from themselves doesn't need applause. Their reward is built into their effort. You don't earn respect by asking for it. You earn it by becoming someone who commands it. Through discipline, through integrity, through visible proof of unseen labor. And when your standard for yourself rises, so does the way others treat you, not because they changed, but because you stopped blending in. Most people whisper through life, hoping to be liked. But you were meant to walk tall, to speak with conviction, to lead without asking for permission. You set the tone. You define the terms. You shape the atmosphere you walk into, if you first shape the one inside yourself. Imagine this, a blacksmith working in silence, hammering steel with rhythm, sweat dripping, no audience. But those who walk by, they stop, they watch, not because he asked them to, but because excellence draws attention. Now ask, have you been living to impress or to become? Are you lowering your standard to fit in or lifting it to rise above? When you treat yourself with honor, when your habits match your words, your world begins to shift. In every room you enter, it will feel it. Your standards decide your schedule, your effort, and your destiny. Each day begins with a decision, whether you see it or not. Will you rise with purpose or drift with the wind? Your standards are not slogans, they are marching orders. They tell your body when to rise, your mind what to focus on, and your heart what to endure. A low standard lets comfort in. It lets shortcuts thrive. But a high standard, one that demands consistency, honesty, and strength, turns every day into a weapon of progress. People don't fall behind all at once. They drift. One missed hour, one lazy effort, one compromise. But you must become the one who doesn't flinch, who shows up sharp, even when no one is watching, especially then. Now imagine this. Two farmers plant seeds. One checks his field daily, waters, clears, protects. The other, he shows up when it's convenient. Guess who harvests more when the season turns? So look at your time, your energy, your evenings. What's allowed? What's denied? What do you call good enough that should have been called unacceptable? Your future isn't written in fate. It's written in your standard, and it gets rewritten every single day you act like it matters. People don't rise to their goals, they fall to their systems. Ambition alone is a spark. It glows for a moment, maybe even lights a fire, but without structure, it burns out. You can crave success, you can hunger for wealth, respect, greatness. But if your habits are built on impulse instead of principle, that ambition becomes noise, loud, distracting, but powerless. Think about it. Everyone wants more money, more peace, more strength, but not everyone builds the system that supports more. They confuse desire with discipline. They talk about goals but live without a calendar. They hope for change but repeat the same mornings. This is the great lie ambition tells you, that feeling it deeply is the same as becoming it. It's not. Excellence never rewards random effort. It answers only to structure. Boring, invisible, daily, the kind no one claps for, the kind you do when you're tired, the kind that happens even when no one's watching. It's not your bursts of motivation that shape you. It's the blueprint you repeat without applause. Want to be wealthy? Where's your system for tracking money, learning skill, compounding value? Want to be respected? Where's your structure for self-mastery, discipline, and personal excellence? Want to be free? Show me your calendar. Show me your wake-up time. Show me your rules. Look around. Real winners aren't just talented, they're methodical. They've architected their day like a craftsman shaping oak. Their standards guide their decisions. Their habits predict their success. They don't ask, do I feel like doing it today? They say, this is what I do, because this is who I am. Picture two painters. One shows up daily. He stretches his canvas, mixes his colors, and studies form. He fails often, yes, but his rhythm is sacred. The other? He waits for inspiration. He collects tools, reads books, talks about creativity, but rarely paints. One has habits, the other has hope. Guess who creates a masterpiece? Now ask yourself, are you operating by emotion or by system? When it's cold, do you still train? When no one's watching, do you still deliver? When life is chaotic, do you still return to your non-negotiables? That's the measure. The difference isn't talent, it's tolerance for repetition. It's commitment to the structure that produces outcomes even when results are delayed, even when progress feels invisible, even when it's not glamorous. Success isn't magic. It's mechanical. It runs on systems. If you build one based on standards, not moods, you become unstoppable. If you leave it to chance, you become inconsistent. So design it, define it, write your rules, guard them, live them. Let them carve the weak parts out of you. The man who masters his system masters his future. Ambition makes noise. Systems make progress. And you were not made to chase, you were made to build. If you want to feel better, start by raising what you expect of yourself. Most people misunderstand the nature of happiness. They chase comfort like it's the end goal, as if lying still, doing less, and avoiding effort will bring peace. But comfort without growth is a slow poison. It soothes you just long enough to rot your potential. And you begin to feel empty, not because life is hard, but because you stop demanding more from yourself. You don't feel better by resting longer than necessary. You don't feel proud by playing it safe. You don't grow self-respect by lowering your standards. The truth is simple. You feel better by becoming more, not louder, not busier, stronger, clearer, sharper, more responsible. You feel better when you rise earlier than comfort wants you to, when you speak with intention instead of excuses, when you look at your life and know you're not coasting. This isn't about punishment, it's about purpose. You weren't born to waste this life in idleness. You were built to evolve, to face resistance, to grow through it. Purpose doesn't come from ease. It comes from effort that matters. And growth, real growth, requires pressure, discipline, boundaries, high standards. Want to walk taller, sleep deeper, speak with more conviction? Then start by elevating what you tolerate from yourself. Stop letting laziness slide. Stop explaining away your lack of effort. You can't hide from yourself. Every skipped promise, every delayed task, every avoided challenge, it registers inside. And over time, it builds guilt, then shame, then identity. But when you do the opposite, when you lift your standards in the quiet moments, when no one's watching, you build dignity. Self-respect is earned in silence, not when the spotlight is on you, but when no one would know if you cut corners, and you still don't. Imagine two runners. One jogs lightly, stops when it hurts, avoids the steep hills. The other attacks the incline. He doesn't enjoy the pain, but he sees it as a test of will, of honor, of who he is becoming. Now ask, who sleeps with a clean heart? Who wakes up proud? Discomfort can break you, or it can build you. It all depends on the reason behind it. When discomfort is the result of growth, of effort aligned with purpose, it empowers you. But when it's the result of regret, delay, and neglect, it haunts you. So ask yourself, do you feel tired because you work too hard, or because you haven't done enough that matters? Do you feel anxious because life is chaotic, or because you allowed too much mediocrity into your days? Your standards aren't just about what you want, they're about what you allow. And whatever you allow, multiplies. So lift them, even when no one notices, especially then. Because life doesn't reward what you say you want, it rewards what you refuse to compromise on. You want more, then be more, demand more. From your mornings, from your words, from your effort, and life will rise to meet you. You cannot have high rewards with low requirements. You cannot plant weak effort and expect a strong harvest. That's not pessimism, it's principle. The universe doesn't reward what you hope for, it rewards what you work for, what you require of yourself when no one's looking. The laws of this world do not bend for wishes, they respond to requirements. And the higher the reward you seek, the more you must raise what you ask of yourself. Everyone wants the prize, freedom, respect, impact. But when you examine the average person's day, how they think, how they act, how they decide, you see something else. They live by minimum, the bare minimum of effort, the lowest threshold of discipline, the cheapest version of integrity. They do just enough to say they tried, but not enough to truly earn the reward. And then they wonder, why isn't it working? Why isn't success showing up? Here's the truth. Life pays according to your standards, not your slogans. What you say you want means nothing if it isn't backed by what you demand from yourself. If your actions are small, your results will be too. You want to be respected? Start with how you carry yourself, your words, your punctuality, your ability to follow through. You want freedom? Then master your discipline first. You want to lead? Then become the kind of person you would follow. Picture this. One man dreams of playing the violin on the grand stage. He tells everyone. He imagines the applause, but he practices only when he feels inspired. Another man sets his requirement. 2 hours daily, rain or shine, emotion irrelevant. He doesn't make a show of it, he just shows up. Years pass. Guess who earns the ovation? One relied on wishing, the other relied on structure. Success is not a fluke. It is the fruit of high standards, sustained effort, and systems that don't depend on mood. If your system breaks every time you're tired or distracted, then you've not yet built something worthy of greatness. So ask yourself honestly, are my requirements aligned with the rewards I seek? Am I asking for excellence while tolerating sloppiness? Am I wishing for transformation while clinging to old habits? This is not about guilt, it's about power. You gain power the moment you decide that what used to be good enough no longer is, that your time deserves more, that your potential demands more, that your life will rise because your standards will rise first. So raise them. Raise what you require from your words. Make them cleaner, bolder, more honest. Raise what you demand from your body. Make it stronger, more disciplined, more energized. Raise your time standards. Cut what wastes you, invest in what builds you. Because success doesn't knock randomly. It knocks where standards have built a door. And if you raise yours, you won't have to chase greatness, it will come looking for you. Your identity is forged by what you refuse to compromise. Who are you really? Not the name you write, not the image you project, not the titles people assign to you in passing, but the version of you that remains when the pressure rises and no one is watching. That's the real test. Your identity isn't declared in slogans. It's not built by the opinions of others. It's forged quietly, painfully, in the moments where you refuse to surrender. It's easy to say who you are, but only the sharpest among us prove it when no one else is looking. Every time you say no to the easier path, no to the lazy impulse, no to the temptation to slack just because it's hidden, you carve yourself sharper. These choices may look small, but over time they chisel out the shape of your character. You don't just become disciplined by accident, you decide to be. Most people don't realize how fragile their identity really is. They change their energy depending on who enters the room. They shift their tone when they're in different company. They adjust their goals depending on who they're trying to impress. But this is not power, this is performance. And it's the reason why most people never really feel secure in themselves. True power comes when your standard is fixed, when your values don't sway in the wind, when your actions remain aligned with your principles, even when applause is absent. It's not just about being consistent. It's about being uncorruptible, unshaken, untouched by the shifting mood of the crowd. You are not just your habits. You are not simply what you do. You are the line you draw, the floor beneath which you refuse to fall, even when no one is watching, especially then. That's the version of you that matters. That's where identity is earned. Picture this. A mason lays stone after stone. He moves with precision. He checks every angle. He doesn't rush. He doesn't cut corners, even when the site supervisor steps away. Now picture another quick with the work, smiling for credit, but skipping details when no eyes are on him. One wall is a performance, the other is a fortress. Which wall survives the storm? Now ask yourself, what are you building with your choices? Are you stacking stones of substance or of shortcuts? Have you let your standards slip when the lights were off? Have you chosen ease over honor, comfort over character, the shortcut over the climb? This is the hard truth most avoid. Every small compromise costs, not in dollars, not in public shame, but in identity. Every time you let something slide that your best self wouldn't accept, you chip away at your own strength. Over time, this becomes a pattern, and that pattern becomes your life. Stop adjusting to the crowd. Stop tailoring your soul to match the mood of the room. Decide who you are and hold that line, not just when it's convenient, always, because once you refuse to compromise, you begin to carry something more than success. You carry integrity. You carry a reputation that doesn't need defending. You carry a name that means something, even when you're gone. And that is worth more than applause, more than praise, more than money. So draw your line and never sink below it, because what you refuse to surrender becomes who you truly are. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. Excellence is not talent. It's not brilliance, luck, or the result of rare genius. It's something quieter, something deeper. Excellence is a tone, a rhythm, a quiet pattern in the way you carry yourself. It's found in how you do the smallest things when no one is paying attention. It lives in the unseen, the uncelebrated, the repetitive motions that most people brush aside as unimportant. And that's exactly where it's born. You may believe that a late start or a skipped task is just a small slip, that being careless with a detail won't affect the big picture. But that's the great misunderstanding. Everything is connected. The way you sweep the floor echoes in the way you lead a meeting. The way you fold your shirt shows up in the way you manage your money. The small becomes the structure, and the structure becomes your life. What most call minor is the very soil where identity grows. A man who trains himself to ignore the details, to say it doesn't matter, is a man slowly eroding his own edge. He may still smile in public. He may still speak of big goals, but inside, the thread is loosening. Excellence doesn't begin in the spotlight. It begins in silence, and it dies the moment you let good enough become your permission slip. There's a reason mediocrity is so common. It's easy to excuse. You can get by with average. You can survive on sloppiness, but you cannot command with it. You cannot lead, influence, or build something lasting if the pattern of your life is stitched together with shortcuts. But when you choose to raise the level of everything, from how you walk to how you write your name, you start creating a life of alignment. Your outer world reflects your inner standard. You speak with weight. You show up with clarity. You leave no room for confusion about who you are and what you stand for. And people feel that, even if they can't explain it. Picture two tailors. One checks every stitch. He irons each seam, even the ones no customer will ever see. The other rushes the inside lining. No one will notice, he tells himself. But they do. Maybe not at first, but over time his reputation starts to carry the scent of carelessness. Meanwhile, the first tailor doesn't need to advertise. His work does it for him. One becomes trusted. The other becomes replaceable. So the question is not whether you're talented enough. It's whether you're committed enough, whether you treat the unseen as sacred, whether you can hold the line when no one is checking, whether you're willing to do it right, even when it would be faster to just do it now. Excellence is built when you move with the same standard in the quiet as you do in the crowd, when the way you handle your tools, your words, your time is consistent regardless of applause. If you want to rise, do not chase moments. Build the rhythm. Build the tone. The person who moves with excellence needs no noise, no stage, no reminder, because the work itself becomes their signature. And the world, so used to shortcuts, takes notice when someone finally refuses to take one. Your circle reflects the standards you live by. You will not rise alone. That is not weakness, it's reality. No matter how disciplined, how focused, how ambitious you are, the people closest to you shape your momentum. They either pull you forward, or they quietly, sometimes even kindly, drag you down. No one walks entirely alone, and those who pretend to are often surrounded by voices they've chosen not to notice. Take a long look at your circle, not the crowd you occasionally laugh with, but the few whose voices you allow inside your mind. Do they sharpen you or soften you? Do they hold you to your highest standard or let you off easy when it counts most? Because here's the truth. If you surround yourself with complainers, your standards will rot. If you keep close to those who mock discipline, belittle ambition, or worship comfort, you will lower your aim without even realizing it. Your circle is your mirror. It doesn't just show you where you're going, it reflects what you tolerate. A man with high standards cannot thrive in a room that ridicules effort. He cannot grow in an environment where progress is mocked, truth is traded for flattery, and ease is the highest value. Sooner or later, he will have to choose his future or their approval. You can't keep both. The idea that you must be surrounded by dozens is false. You don't need a stadium, you need alignment. One or two people who truly see you, who don't let your excuses slide, who call you out, not out of jealousy, but out of respect. People who demand more from you than you once knew how to ask of yourself. These are not critics, they are comrades, and they are rare. Now picture a crew of rowers, their oars slicing through water with rhythm and power. Each person in the boat matters. If even one drags his oar lazily, the rhythm breaks. The boat begins to spin, wobble, slow. The energy of the entire team is disrupted by the apathy of one. But when all row with force and focus, when they trust each other, push each other, match each other's pace, the boat flies across the water. Effort becomes effortless. Progress becomes natural. The same is true for your life. One lazy voice in your ear can cost you a year. A disciplined ally can ignite a decade. So ask yourself honestly, who's in your boat? Are they rowing or are they resting? Are they pushing forward or just along for the ride? Are they helping you rise or quietly sinking your momentum? These are hard questions, but they are necessary ones because your environment is never neutral. Every conversation, every relationship, every shared silence is either sharpening you or softening you. If you're serious about change, the first shift must happen in your circle, not in anger, not with arrogance, but with clarity, with the calm confidence that says, I'm going somewhere and I cannot carry what weakens me. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from people who once felt comfortable but now keep you small. This doesn't mean you think you're better than others. It means you've decided to be better than you used to be. And every standard you raise will make someone uncomfortable. That's how you know you're growing. When you start waking up early, setting boundaries, speaking with purpose, you'll notice who begins to distance themselves. Let them. Not everyone is meant to join you at the next level. Growth demands friction, and friction reveals loyalty. The ones who truly support your rise will not be offended by your higher standards. They will rise with you or cheer you from the shore. So protect your energy like your future depends on it, because it does. Choose wisely who rows beside you. Listen closely to who speaks into your plans. And never apologize for expecting those closest to you to row with purpose, because a rising life is never built alone. It is built with those who row. And never quit. You are always training someone, even when you think you aren't. Every day, in ways big and small, you are teaching the world how to treat you, whether you realize it or not. Your actions, your tone, your boundaries, or your lack of them, send a message. You don't need to give speeches to make a statement. You don't have to shout your worth to be heard, because your silence teaches. Your discipline teaches. Your presence teaches. People are always observing, always absorbing, always responding to what you show them is acceptable. You set the standard, you draw the line, and people will treat you according to what you consistently allow. If you let someone interrupt you every time you're deep in your work, you've just shown them that your time isn't sacred. If you say yes when your heart screams no, you've shown them that your voice doesn't matter, not even to yourself. If you tolerate disrespect in the name of keeping peace, you've taught them that your boundaries are negotiable. Over time, they stop asking what's okay and simply assume you'll bend. And the tragedy? You trained them to think that way. But the reverse is just as true. When you protect your focus, when you answer calls on your time, not theirs, you teach others to respect your rhythm. When you speak with honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, you show that your truth is not for sale. When you walk with clarity, act with purpose, and stay consistent no matter who's watching, you don't just command respect, You raise the temperature of the room. Others either rise with you or retreat from the heat, but either way, you're no longer shrinking to fit. This isn't just about what kind of life you're building, it's about what kind of tone you're setting around you. Whether in your home, your workplace, or your relationships, you are the thermostat. You create the culture by how you carry yourself. You're not just leading yourself, you're sending out silent instructions for how others will engage with you. If you're serious, disciplined, and direct, that tone echoes in your surroundings. But if you're scattered, inconsistent, and passive, that tone takes root too. People are mirrors, and they reflect what you project. Picture two teachers. One walks into the classroom early, prepared, composed. She speaks with calm authority, and her expectations are firm but fair. The students sit taller. They listen, not because she yells, but because her presence has weight. The other teacher shows up late, shuffles papers, lets small disruptions slide. Chaos grows. The students talk back, tune out, test limits. Both teachers said something, but only one taught leadership without ever needing to say the word. So the real question is, what are you teaching the world by the way you move through it? Are your standards clear, or do they wobble with your mood? Do people know what you will and will not accept, or do they take chances, unsure of who you'll be today? Consistency is power, not perfection. Consistency. When your actions align with your values, people start to understand you without explanation. They feel your boundary. They hear your no even before you speak it. And more importantly, they learn to bring their best when they're around you. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. You want respect? Then act like it. Speak like it. Move like it. Set your expectations and then be the first to live them. You want loyalty? Then model it. Show up. Keep your word. Be the example of what you wish others would become. Because every time you choose strength over comfort, you send a signal to the world, and that signal builds your reputation before your words ever reach the room. People trust those who trust themselves. They respect those who set the tone early and never lower it for convenience, and they follow those who refuse to be swayed by noise. It's not what you demand with your voice that gets honored. It's what you demand with your life. So step back and audit yourself, not with guilt, but with truth. Are you tolerating things that diminish your power? Are you bending to keep peace when what you need is to hold your line? Are you silently training people to underestimate your worth? Because every boundary you uphold builds something stronger. Every clear standard you enforce becomes part of your legacy. And every compromise you avoid becomes a signal that you take yourself seriously. The world doesn't decide how to treat you, you do. So teach boldly, teach consistently, and teach with a kind of presence that makes others better simply by being near it. Because that's not just leadership. That's how you build a life and a name that commands respect without ever asking for it. You either set the tone or suffer from someone else's. Each morning you rise, one of two things happens. You set the tone or someone else does. And that moment, often quiet and uncelebrated, determines everything that follows. You've handed the steering wheel of your day to the loudest voice, the first notification, the most urgent crisis. But if you wake up and plant your feet with a decision, a clear choice of how you will move, think, speak, and respond, then you begin to live on your terms. That's not routine, that's power. Because when you set the tone, the world begins to bend around your rhythm. The person who does not declare their direction is always pulled by distractions. They move like a leaf in the wind, reacting to every noise, every request, every impulse. Their thoughts aren't their own. They're borrowed, reshuffled echoes of whatever the world throws at them. But the one who rises with clarity, who names their goals and guards their time, who acts not out of reaction but intention, that person doesn't chase the day, they command it. They walk with gravity. People notice when they enter, not because they shout, but because their focus is unmistakable. Their energy sets the pace, not the mood of the room. That kind of leadership isn't accidental. It's the result of inner authority, built each morning by design. Now picture this. Two workers arrive at the same factory. The shift hasn't started, the machines are still warming, but their presence already speaks volumes. One walks in early, coat straight, posture upright, eyes sharp. He doesn't need to say a word. His readiness announces itself. The other stumbles in late, shoulders slouched, still rubbing sleep from his eyes, dragging his steps like the day is a punishment. Both face the same tasks, the same hours, the same environment, but only one is setting the tone. The other is being set by it. That's the difference between control and drift. between progress and pause. And over time, it's the reason one climbs and the other stays stuck. So ask yourself, honestly, are you setting the rhythm of your day? Or are you waiting for someone else to push you forward? Do you walk with conviction, or do you stumble through borrowed thoughts, influenced by moods, media, and the habits of people you don't even admire? You don't need a megaphone to lead. You need clarity. You need to speak to yourself before the world gets a chance to speak first. That inner voice, trained, disciplined, and confident, must be the first sound that echoes in your mind. Otherwise, the noise of others will do the talking for you, and eventually the living too. If you want power, not in the shallow, loud sense, but the kind that shapes rooms and decisions, then begin by commanding your environment. Start with your desk, your schedule, your words, your posture. Clean them up, sharpen them. Walk through the door like you belong at the top, not with arrogance, but with unshakable clarity. Because when your standard is high, when your attention to detail is fierce, the world notices. It may resist at first, but eventually it adjusts. People rise around those who refuse to lower their standard. They step back when they know mediocrity won't be tolerated. That is leadership. Let others feel your seriousness, not through force, but through consistency. Let your presence signal that here we aim higher. Here we value time. Here we work with purpose. Because standards are contagious. The moment you stop explaining and start embodying, the world begins to reflect what you demonstrate. You'll see it in how people speak to you, in how they show up, in how they treat your time, your space, your boundaries. And when they don't align, you won't have to shout. You'll simply move forward without them. The world doesn't yield to the loudest. It yields to the clearest. To those who declare their direction clearly, daily, and without apology. So tomorrow, when you rise, don't wait for the world to tell you what kind of day it will be. Decide. Decide what energy you will carry, what standard you will enforce, what rhythm you will walk to. Because once you set the tone, the noise fades, and your life, instead of being shaped by circumstance, begins to be shaped by choice. When you raise your standards, your past will try to pull you back. Change is not a straight road paved with applause. It's not just about becoming better. It's about facing the resistance that rises the moment you try. The second you raise your standards, something inside you and something around you starts pulling you back. It's quiet at first. A subtle doubt, an old craving, a familiar voice saying, "Don't be so hard on yourself. You're fine the way you are." But this isn't concern. It's the voice of comfort begging you to return. Old habits rise like ghosts. Old friends reappear with temptations disguised as jokes. Old stories whisper from the shadows, reminding you of who you used to be, hoping you'll come home to mediocrity. But you don't get to be the same person and live a different life. You don't get to evolve while clinging to everything that once kept you small. Progress demands sacrifice, and often that sacrifice looks a lot like comfort. When you commit to a higher standard, you aren't just rejecting an old behavior. You're declaring a new identity. That's why the pull is so strong. You're not just saying no to something external. You're saying goodbye to a version of yourself, a version that maybe helped you survive, but one that cannot help you thrive. And that decision takes courage. Because when you choose character over comfort, when you say, "This is who I am now," and mean it, you will feel the loneliness of leaving the crowd behind. But you must. Because the standard you've now chosen is not about making life easier. It's about making you stronger. The old you doesn't belong in the room you're building. And if you keep inviting him back, you sabotage your future from within. You cannot become something new while holding tightly to who you used to be. Change begins with subtraction, cutting out the behaviors, conversations, and company that no longer serve the life you're committed to building. That means some friendships won't survive. That means some rituals, some routines, some late-night comforts have to go. Not because you hate them, but because they no longer align with who you are. Think of a snake shedding its skin. It doesn't hate the old skin. It simply can't grow until it lets it go. Growth requires you to release the familiar, and often the familiar is exactly what's holding you down. Your next level of life has no place for things you once tolerated. Picture this: a man makes a decision to stop drinking. He wants clarity. He wants discipline. He wants self-respect. His old friends don't understand. They laugh. "Just one," they say. "Don't be so dramatic." He hesitates because returning would be easy, familiar, comfortable. But it's a trap. If he returns even once, His old identity wins. The identity that told him numbing pain was easier than facing it. The identity that disguised weakness as freedom. But if he says no, not with anger, but with resolve, he burns a bridge that leads back to a man he swore he'd outgrow. And in that moment, he becomes someone new. Not because the change was complete, but because he proved he was willing to defend it. Now ask yourself, what have you raised only to let slip? What promise did you whisper to yourself in the quiet moments, then abandon the moment someone mocked it? What version of you tried to emerge but couldn't survive under the pressure of old influences? We've all felt it. The moment you commit to something better, the world tests your seriousness. It will laugh at your new routines. It will tempt you with ease. It will push you to compromise just once, because what's the big deal? But every small compromise is a crack in your new foundation, and enough cracks will bring the old house crashing down. When you raise your standards, expect resistance. It's not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's proof you're shifting something real. Comfort hates disruption. Mediocrity despises clarity, and the people who once cheered you on may feel threatened when you begin demanding more from yourself and from life. That's part of the price. But the reward? Power. Quiet, unshakable power. The kind that comes not from controlling others, but from mastering yourself. The kind of power that builds respect in silence, that turns boundaries into shields, that makes others say, there's something different about you, even if they don't have the words for it. This isn't a game. This is your life. And no one gets to walk two roads at once. So if the old path leads to weakness, laziness, compromise, burn it. Not with bitterness, but with finality. Let it go. Because it's not just about moving forward. It's about making sure you never have the option to slide backward. Burn the bridge if it leads to the man who made excuses. Burn the bridge if it leads to the version of you who needed permission. Burn the bridge if it keeps you from becoming the person you've promised yourself you'd become. You weren't born to live in reverse. You were born to rise. So let go of the story, the silence, the softness that used to define you, and write something new, one standard at a time. Standards don't work until they're non-negotiable. Anyone can say they want more. Anyone can talk about their goals, post about their dreams, speak passionately about the life they're building, but talk is easy. What separates the wishers from the winners is one thing: standards. Not the kind you declare in moments of motivation, not the kind you share when you feel strong, but the kind you enforce when you're exhausted, discouraged. A true standard becomes non-negotiable the moment it's tested. That's where most people break, when life pushes. They lower the bar, adjust the line, excuse the slip. But when you do that, you're not living by a standard. You're living by emotion. And emotion is a poor compass. It changes with the weather, it bends with fatigue, and it disappears the moment discomfort arrives. Real standards are built like iron. They are not flexible. They don't shift with your mood. They don't yield under pressure. They become part of your identity. This is who I am now, and no matter how tired you are, no matter what excuse rises in your mind, no matter how quiet the moment is when no one would even know, you don't break. You don't negotiate. Because your word, even to yourself, means something. That's what separates a person who flirts with excellence from the one who embodies it. It's not about feelings, it's about principle. Your standard doesn't ask for approval. It stands silently, immovably, even when no one claps for it. Imagine this. A shipbuilder owns a small yard by the docks. He makes a promise no boat leaves until every bolt is checked twice, no exceptions. One night, orders are backed up. He's behind schedule. The sun is setting, and fatigue tugs at his body. He could skip a step, no one would know, but still, he checks every bolt, every single one, because that's the promise. Not just to the client, not just to his crew, but to himself. That's not just craftsmanship, that's character. That's what a real standard looks like. It's not about the customer. It's not about appearances. It's about living in alignment with the identity you've chosen, especially when it costs you something. So ask yourself, what is your line in the sand? What behavior is now beneath you, even if no one would call it out? What compromise used to slip by, but no longer gets a pass under your watch? Where have you tolerated inconsistency, excused sloppiness, or allowed your old self to sneak back in just because the moment was quiet or the stakes were low? These are the places where your identity is still being negotiated. And the longer you negotiate, the more you train yourself to see standards as optional. That's dangerous, because excellence isn't born in public, it's enforced in private. If you can't live your standard when no one is watching, then you haven't really committed to it. You're still trying it on. The truth is simple but sobering. If your standards are based on how you feel, they'll collapse the moment adversity rises. If you only act with discipline when it's convenient, you're not disciplined, you're just motivated. And motivation, by its nature, fades. But when your standards are fixed, when you have decided once and for all what kind of person you are, then the world can throw what it wants and you'll remain unmoved. Because you're not reacting anymore. You're choosing, you're commanding. That's what makes you powerful. That's what makes you untouchable. Consistency isn't glamorous. It doesn't get applause, but it builds something that no amount of hype can fake. Reputation, not just with others, but with yourself. And that reputation becomes the floor beneath you, the unshakable base you stand on when everything else feels uncertain. When life hits hard, you don't crumble. You don't ask, can I do this? You already decided that long ago, because your standard was never about winning once. It was about showing up right every single time, no matter the mood, no matter the storm, no matter the odds. So if you want to build a life that lasts, one that commands respect, one that leads others, one that cannot be derailed by pressure, then start here. Make your standards non-negotiable. Define them clearly. Say them out loud. Write them down. Then live them. Not once, but always, until they stop feeling like rules and start becoming who you are. The person who doesn't miss a workout, not because of a fitness goal, but because discipline is part of their DNA. The person who speaks with integrity, not because it's easy, but because truth is non-negotiable. The person who moves with excellence, not for praise, but because anything less feels like betrayal. You are not here to play with potential. You are here to fulfill it. And that begins by setting a standard so strong, so clear, so rooted in purpose, that life itself begins to adjust around it. Because when your standard is immovable, you become unstoppable. Every time you raise your standard, you attract a new level of life. The world meets you where you stand, not where you wish to be, not where you pretend to be, but exactly where you truly are, internally, consistently, and unapologetically. It responds not to your desires, but to your standard. When you carry yourself with clarity, with strength, with a non-negotiable sense of self-worth, something changes in the atmosphere around you. You no longer have to beg for attention or knock endlessly on doors that never open. Instead, you become a signal, and the right people, the right opportunities, the right paths begin to move toward you. Not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because you've risen to meet it. When you walk into a room with preparation in your back pocket and purpose in your spine, people notice. Not because you ask them to, but because your presence tells the truth before your mouth does. You don't get what you beg for, you get what you've earned. And earned doesn't mean exhaustion, it means alignment. It means your actions match your ambition. It means your discipline reflects your desire. It means you don't just say what you want, you prove you're ready for it. Through how you live, how you think, how you carry yourself, long before anyone's watching. Worthiness isn't about permission, it's about proof. You prove it to yourself before the world believes it. You rise in the dark before the spotlight ever finds you. Most people wait to be told they're good enough, ready enough, visible enough, but nothing changes until you change. The world doesn't go first, you do. You move first. You raise the bar first. You commit to excellence first. And then slowly but surely the world begins to treat you as the person you've become. But if you hesitate, if you stall, waiting for life to show signs before you act, then you stay stuck. The order is always the same. You rise. The world responds. Picture a craftsman. Not flashy, not loud, just consistent. Day after day, he sharpens his tools. He refines his skill. He polishes his craft while no one is watching. There are no fans, no applause, no external rewards, just quiet work and internal fire. Years pass. And then, one day, someone notices. Someone sees the quality, the attention to detail, the unmistakable standard, and opportunity arrives, not as a miracle, but as a recognition. The craftsman didn't get lucky. He got ready. He didn't force the moment. He matched it. His standard made luck unnecessary. Now ask yourself, have you been waiting to be chosen, hoping someone finally sees your worth, or are you becoming undeniable, building so much value, so much clarity, so much alignment that the world can't ignore you? Have you been chasing validation or mastering your craft? Have you been stretching yourself toward your next level, or simply waiting for life to pick you up and carry you there? This is the truth most avoid. Life does not promote who wants more. It promotes who has become more. The next level isn't unlocked through force, through noise, through desperation. It's unlocked through alignment. When your energy, your actions, your self-image, and your standards match the future you want, that future begins to recognize you. You stop having to get in the room. You stop asking for opportunity to see you. You become the opportunity. And when you reach that place, when your standard finally matches your ambition, you'll realize that every delay, every silence, every invisible season was part of your preparation, not punishment, preparation. Because when the door does open, and it will, you won't need to scramble. You'll walk through it with calm authority because you'll know you didn't arrive by accident. You arrived by design. You didn't hope your way in. You worked your way in. You became the kind of person who belongs there. But this requires honesty, brutal honesty. Where have you been waiting for life to lift you when you should have been lifting yourself? Where have you been hoping for a shortcut when what's required is a standard? Have you been living by temporary motivation or by long-term identity? Because nothing sustainable is built on emotion. It's built on principle, discipline, decisiveness. It's built by refusing to break the line you drew, even when no one else is holding you accountable. This world doesn't give you what you ask for. It gives you what you're prepared to hold. And preparation isn't passive, it's active. It's the early mornings, the extra mile, the quiet refusal to drop your standard just because no one's watching. You aren't owed anything, but you are capable of everything, if you're willing to become the kind of person who can carry it. So raise it, raise your speech, raise your effort, raise your decisions, raise the way you speak about yourself, the way you walk into rooms, the way you manage your time. Set a standard so firm, so real, so alive in you that the world can't help but respond. The moment you stop waiting for something outside of you to change and start becoming someone worthy of everything you want, that's the moment your life begins to shift. Because the world meets you where you stand. So stand higher and let the world rise to meet you. You must judge yourself before the world ever gets a chance. You think people are hard on you? That's nothing compared to the judgment you give yourself in silence. When the crowd is gone, the lights are off, and there's no one left to impress, that's when the real voice speaks. Not the noisy voice of critics, not the flattering voice of friends, but the one that knows every corner of you. The one that remembers what you said you'd do, who you said you'd become, and whether or not you honored that promise. That voice doesn't scream. It whispers. But its truth cuts deeper than any insult, sharper than any applause. And it always asks the same question. Did you do your best today? That's where your peace lives, or where your torment begins. Did you rise to your own standard? Did you show up with discipline, with courage, with integrity, even when it was inconvenient? Or did you compromise, drift, distract, delay? You don't answer this out loud. You answer it by how you feel when your head hits the pillow. You answer it by the look in your eyes when you meet your own reflection. That's the judgment that matters. That's the standard that defines you. Most people are terrified of external judgment. They shrink in fear at what others might say, how others might react. But the strongest people walk another road. They know that the only voice that truly matters is the one that speaks when the room is empty. The one you can't run from. The one that sees past your mask and measures you against your own potential. This voice doesn't care about your excuses. It doesn't care how tired you were. It doesn't care if you got credit or if someone else got the promotion. It only cares about effort, about consistency, about truth. And here's the paradox. The stronger your standards become, the louder that voice gets. Not because it's cruel, but because it knows what you're capable of. It's not there to break you. It's there to build you. To remind you of the level you committed to, the identity you declared, the future you claimed. That voice is your ally, if you're willing to listen with honesty. Picture this: a soldier on night watch. There are no officers around, no cameras, just darkness, cold air, and silence. He could relax. Let his eyes close for just a moment. But he doesn't. He stays alert, focused, not because someone might catch him, but because he is watching, because he knows the oath he took, because he will know if he fails, even if no one else ever does. That's the kind of honor that doesn't need a spotlight. That's the kind of standard that builds something unshakable. So ask yourself now, are you living for applause or for peace? Are you working for show or for pride? Are your daily choices driven by appearance or by alignment? When you say you value discipline, does your routine reflect it? When you say you want greatness, do your actions chase it or just admire it from a distance? These are not questions for others. They're not for your followers, your co-workers, or your family. They're for you. And they're answered not in words, but in quiet accountability. Judge yourself, not with cruelty, but with bold honesty. That kind of judgment is not meant to destroy your self-worth. It's meant to reveal your self-respect. Hold the mirror without flinching. Look clearly. Ask, did I give enough? Did I waste today or use it? Did I protect my time or let it bleed away in distraction and delay? These answers sting sometimes, but they also sharpen you. They forge you. And the person who masters self-judgment, who lives by an internal scorecard, never has to fear anyone else's opinion because they know with certainty that their worth is built on real substance, not shallow approval. You can fool the crowd, you can charm the office, you can play the part well enough to earn smiles and awards, but you cannot lie to your conscience. You cannot escape the nightly audit of your own soul. And the higher you climb, the more demanding that voice becomes, because it knows you're no longer the person who just hopes for more, you're the person who's capable of it. And anything less than your best becomes a betrayal, not to the world, but to yourself. This is where your confidence comes from, not from compliments, but from completion, from knowing that even when no one saw it, even when it didn't pay off yet, you gave everything you had. You kept your word. You did what was hard. You followed through. And that voice, that internal judge, that quiet companion, it nodded in approval. That's the kind of peace that no praise can buy. That's the kind of self-trust that makes you unshakable. So tonight, when it's just you, ask the real questions. Don't run from them. Welcome them. Did I show up as the person I said I would be? Did I fight for my vision or fold to comfort? Did I uphold my standards when no one else was there to hold me accountable? Because that's the voice that matters most. And if you can answer it with courage, you don't need to answer to anyone else. You are either rising by decision or dying by drift. Life does not pause. It does not freeze for your uncertainty, your fatigue, or your excuses. It moves ruthlessly, relentlessly, and with or without your participation. Every sunrise is an invitation, not a guarantee. And if you are not rising with intention, you are drifting without resistance. But drifting rarely feels like failure at first, because most failure doesn't announce itself with a crash. Most of it whispers, quietly, invisibly. It's a missed hour here, a postponed goal there, a corner cut, a discipline delayed. And then, without even realizing it, you've let go of the future you once claimed to be building. Drift is dangerous because it feels like rest. It feels harmless. You say to yourself, I'm just taking a break. I'll get back to it soon. But the truth is, growth is not natural. Decline is. Growth is not passive. Drift is. Without intention, without an internal anchor, your standards begin to erode. Not with loud defiance, but with slow permission. And before long, you're not the person you were, and certainly not the person you could have been. You've become a version of yourself that tolerates life rather than commands it. You rise when you decide to rise. Not once, not on January 1st, not after a motivational video, but every single morning, every hour, every moment when laziness creeps in and offers you the illusion of comfort. The question is not whether life is hard. It is. The question is whether you will meet its pressure with principle or with passivity. Growth is a decision that must be remade constantly. And your standards, what you allow, what you require, what you refuse to compromise, are the engine behind that decision. Without strong standards, there is no consistent rise. Only sporadic sprints followed by long collapses. Imagine a boat tied to no dock, left in still water. No storm, no crashing waves, just time. And yet it drifts. Not because it was pushed, but because it wasn't anchored. That's how most people lose their greatness, not through tragedy, but through subtle neglect. You don't need disaster to fail. You only need to wait. You only need to rest for a while, without structure, without a return date, without a plan. And what was once a temporary pause becomes a permanent plateau. So ask yourself, have you anchored your standards, or have you been drifting from your potential while convincing yourself that you're just resting for now? Be honest, because excuses wear disguises. They sound reasonable. They sound deserved. I've been through a lot. I'll start after this season. I need to feel better first. But drift doesn't ask for your permission. It just begins. And every day you delay your return is another mile further from the person you promised yourself you'd become. Each day you wait for perfect conditions is a day lost to drift. Waiting for motivation is like waiting for the wind to carry you. It might come, but it will never be consistent. And while you wait, time moves. Your body weakens, your skills dull, your vision fades. The world won't stop spinning just because you paused your pursuit. Someone else out there is choosing discipline today. Someone else is rising in the same storm you're sitting in. The difference isn't the environment, it's the anchor. But there is a remedy, and it's not dramatic, it's not even loud. It's a choice, made in silence, repeated in private. It happens when you wake up and move before you feel ready. When you say no to the voice that says, take it easy, and yes to the one that says, we rise now. It happens when you decide that discipline is more important than feeling good, that action comes before inspiration, that progress, even if small, is better than perfection delayed. Each time you choose effort over ease, discipline over delay, clarity over comfort, you win something back. You reclaim a piece of who you were born to be, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Growth requires resistance. If you are not pushing against something, you are not building strength. You are losing it. Every act of discipline is an act of defiance against drift, and each one plants a stake deeper into the ground of your future. Do not underestimate the quiet days, the ones with no praise, no spotlight, no urgency. Those are the days when drift sneaks in, and those are the days that define you. Rise in those moments, and you won't need to rely on adrenaline to build your life. You'll rely on identity, and that kind of person becomes unshakable. This is not about perfection. You will fall, you will slip, you will have days where drift wins, but the question is, do you notice it? Do you correct it? Do you return? A person who is anchored might drift for a moment, but they never drift far, because their standards pull them back. Their vision calls them home. So draw the line, set the anchor, define the standard that says this is who I am, even when no one's watching, because your future isn't waiting, it's moving. And the question is not whether it will arrive, it's whether you'll be ready to meet it. Drift or rise. But choose, because if you don't, life will choose for you. And it rarely chooses the highest version of who you could have been. What you accept privately will define you publicly. No one sees your private moments. No one watches how you start your day when the alarm goes off and there's no meeting to run to. No one sees how you speak to yourself in frustration or 5 minutes of silence to think. No one notices the 1,000 invisible decisions you make when no one is around to clap or criticize. But those moments, they build you. That's where the real work is. That's where the public version of you is formed, refined, and ultimately revealed. Your standard doesn't live in your slogans. It lives in your solitude, in how you treat your time when it feels like there's no consequence, in how you handle your responsibilities when no one would blame you for letting them slide, in how you hold your posture, your words, your integrity, not for show, but because you're watching yourself. The world only sees the result, but you know the process. You know the corners you cut, or didn't, and eventually so does everyone else, because your private habits become your public reputation. Whether you like it or not, people marvel at greatness. They stand in awe at the results. The record-breaking athlete, the compelling speaker, the masterful leader. But what they forget, or ignore, is the fact that those results were not born in the arena. They were born in silence, in the shadows, in the hours and days and years when no one was watching, when motivation had long since left the room and only standards remained. Greatness isn't an act, it's a rhythm, and rhythm is built in private. It's the decision to not cut the corner, to do the extra rep, to proofread the sentence again, not because the audience will know, but because you will. It's in those invisible acts that power grows. Every time you choose effort over ease when no one else is looking, you put another brick in the foundation of a life that can stand in the storm. Every time you betray your own standard behind closed doors, that foundation weakens. The cracks may not show yet, but give it time, they always do. Picture this. A writer sits at a desk, surrounded by silence. The world outside is rushing past. No one is waiting on him. No deadline looms. But he leans forward, eyes fixed on a single sentence. He rewrites it, not once, not twice, 10 times. Not because a critic will count, but because he knows. Because his standard is not dictated by the audience, but by his own code. His readers won't see the struggle, but they'll feel the result, the clarity, the sharpness, the authority. That's what real work does. It leaves fingerprints, even when no one saw the hands. Now ask yourself honestly, what are you letting slide in private, hoping it won't catch up with you? What promises have you stopped keeping just because no one noticed? What behaviors, once a matter of pride, have you now excused in the name of just this once? These are not small matters. These are the places where your standard truly lives, and they are the first things the world will feel, even if it never sees them. If you want strength in the spotlight, you must raise your standard in the shadows, not once, not just when you're inspired, but daily, especially when it's quiet, especially when it seems to not matter, because everything matters. If your inner life is undisciplined, chaotic, half-hearted, your outer life will follow. Maybe not today, but soon. You can't fake substance forever, and real excellence never comes from performance. It comes from practice. Repeated, private, deliberate practice. Excellence is a muscle, and like any muscle, it's built through repetition. You become what you repeat, especially when no one else is looking. Because those repetitions, invisible to the world, are loud to your soul. They shape your posture, they mold your identity, they define your self-respect. Every time you keep your own word in private, you build confidence that doesn't need validation. And confidence like that, it's unshakable. It radiates before you speak. It leads before it commands. So, if you've been waiting for motivation, for an audience, for a deadline, stop. The best things you will ever build are done in the dark. The strongest version of you is forged in silence. You don't need permission to raise your standard. You need conviction. The conviction to say, I am the kind of person who finishes, who sharpens, who shows up, no matter who's watching. That's where greatness begins, not in the moment the world notices you, but in the 100 quiet days it didn't. In the early morning where you could have snoozed, in the evening where you could have coasted, in the conversation where you could have lied, but didn't. In the gym rep you didn't skip, in the document you didn't rush, in the details that build the kind of life that doesn't need a spotlight to shine. The shadow builds the spotlight. The secret builds the strength. So raise your standard when no one's watching, because one day everyone will. If you don't respect your own time, no one else will. Time is your most sacred currency. It is the one resource you cannot borrow, cannot store, and can never earn back once spent. Every second that passes is an irreversible investment. Yet most people spend it like it's endless, as if another hour will always come, another day will always be waiting, another year can always be bought. But it won't. It can't. What you do with your time today is shaping who you'll be tomorrow. And if you don't set a high standard for how that time is used, the world will gladly spend it for you. Look around. How many people spend hours reacting to notifications, gossip, entertainment, and interruptions, never realizing that their future is quietly being drained in the background? It's not that they're lazy, it's that they haven't decided, they haven't chosen what their time is for. And when you don't claim your time with purpose, life defaults to the path of least resistance, distraction, delay, and drift. Your time gets pulled in 100 directions by other people's priorities and by your own undisciplined habits. If you don't protect your time, others will steal it. Not maliciously, not always intentionally, but they will take it. They'll fill your calendar with meetings that don't matter. They'll send messages that demand attention, but not action. They'll ask for favors that cost you more than it benefits them. And if you haven't drawn the line, you'll find yourself constantly available but rarely effective. You'll confuse motion for meaning, busyness for value, noise for purpose. And if you don't guard your focus, the world will drown it in nonsense, meaningless headlines, pointless debates. You'll spend the prime energy of your life reacting to things that don't matter and then wonder why the things that do never seem to move forward. The problem isn't a lack of hours, it's a lack of standards. You don't need more time, You need a better code for how you treat it. But something powerful happens when you raise that code, when you treat every minute like it matters, when you no longer tolerate distractions disguised as entertainment or obligations disguised as emergencies, when you decide that your time is not just something to fill, but something to forge. You begin to move differently, and the world begins to treat your presence with weight, not because you demand it, but because your clarity is unshakable. People feel when someone has standards. They step carefully around those who value themselves. Picture this: two craftsmen. Each has the same tools, the same hours, the same potential. One checks the clock every 10 minutes, answers calls, gets pulled into conversations. He allows interruption. He lets energy leak. The other, he sets his hours, closes the door, moves with rhythm. Every hammer strike, every measurement, every decision is deliberate. He's not rushed, but he's relentless. He doesn't just use time, he commands it. And what he creates, it reflects that fire. The difference isn't talent, it's time. Respected, protected, and used with purpose. Now ask yourself honestly, have you been casual with your time? Have you traded your mornings for extra sleep, your evenings for noise? Have you surrendered your energy to people and problems that don't deserve it, simply because you never decided what your time was meant to build? If you want to rise, if you want to own your life, you must raise your standard for how you spend your time. That means you need a plan, not just a calendar full of appointments, but a conviction full of priorities. You must ask yourself, what am I really building? And then block out time, sacred, guarded time, for the work that fuels it. And when people try to take it not out of malice, but out of habit, you say, this hour is spoken for, not because you're rude, but because you're serious. You train people how to treat your time by how you treat it first. If you act like your time is negotiable, they will treat it as disposable. If you treat it with clarity and intention, they will rise or they will fall away. Either way, your life becomes sharper, cleaner, purpose-driven. You don't need more hours, you need higher standards. The CEO has 24 hours. The Olympian has 24 hours. The writer, the builder, the entrepreneur, they all live within the same limit. The difference is what they refuse to waste. It's not about being busy, it's about being aligned. Every task, every meeting, every block of time should echo your mission. And if it doesn't, cut it. Don't explain, just cut it. Because you have something to build. Decide what your time is for and defend it with conviction. Mornings are for clarity. Guard them. Midday is for momentum. Focus deeply. Evenings are for reflection or rest, not for unconscious escape. Build rituals that reinforce your mission. Design your schedule to elevate your standard. Let your calendar be a mirror of what matters most, not to others, to you. Because once you respect your own time, you teach the world to do the same. And when time starts working for you, not against you, you stop chasing progress and start compounding it. That's when your life shifts, not because of luck, not because of hustle, but because you finally decided that your time was sacred and you rose to meet it. A low standard feels safe until it destroys you. Comfort can feel like protection. It wraps around you like a soft blanket and tells you everything's fine, that you're doing enough, that you deserve to coast. But comfort, unchecked, is a trap. It whispers lies that keep you small. It shields you not just from pressure, but from power. And the longer you hide there, the more fragile you become. The more you avoid challenge, the more foreign it begins to feel. And then, when life inevitably tests you, and it will, you find that you are unprepared, exposed, empty-handed in the storm you never thought would come. That's the brutal truth about low standards. They feel safe until safety is no longer an option. Because real life doesn't care about your comfort zone. It cares about your capacity, your resilience, your strength. And strength is never built in ease. It's forged in resistance, in repetition, in showing up when your excuses are loud and your energy is low. A life of low standards may buy you short-term relief, but it will cost you long-term survival. People often mistake safety for the absence of struggle. But true safety, the kind that lasts, is the presence of strength. A strong person is safe not because they avoid problems, but because they are prepared for them. They've built endurance. They've felt pressure and learned to breathe through it. They don't fear difficulty because they've made it their training ground. And when the storm arrives, as it always does, They don't panic. They stand. Picture two fortresses. One is built quickly. It looks solid from the outside, tall, smooth, presentable. But it was constructed with weak stone, shallow foundations, corners cut to save time. When the storm hits, the walls crumble. The illusion of strength vanishes in the first gust. The other fortress? Built slowly, each stone inspected, each beam reinforced. Hours spent in silence, perfecting what no one else would notice. But it holds. Because what was hidden in the build becomes visible in the test. One falls because it was designed for appearance. The other stands because it was designed for pressure. Now ask yourself, have you been lowering your standard just to avoid discomfort? Have you told yourself this is good enough, knowing deep down you had more to give? Maybe you've avoided the hard conversation, skipped the extra effort, delayed the decision, all because the challenge felt too heavy. But every time you do that, you're building your fortress with weak stone. You're teaching yourself that avoidance is acceptable, and that habit, repeated long enough, becomes identity. It's easy to convince yourself that peace comes from ease, but that peace is temporary, surface level, because the deeper part of you, the one that knows what you're capable of, never stops watching. And when you ignore that voice long enough, something inside begins to decay, not loudly, but silently, softly, until one day you look at your life and wonder how it became so hollow, so vulnerable, so afraid of being tested. Raising your standard may feel painful. It may mean saying no when it would be easier to say yes. It may mean showing up earlier, staying later, sweating more, sacrificing comfort. It may mean losing people who only like the weaker version of you, but not raising your standard? That costs far more, because weakness feels easy until it's tested. Then it crumbles. And by the time you realize what you've lost, it's already too late to prepare. Here's the truth. Storms don't wait for you to be ready. Life doesn't schedule difficulty around your convenience. It shows up when it wants and exposes everything you've built. The cracks, the shortcuts, the corners you cut when no one was watching. But it also reveals what's strong, the character, the habits, the boundaries, the choices you made in silence that no one celebrated. But you made them anyway. So don't wait for the storm. Build your strength now. Do the hard thing before it becomes the only thing. Set your standard higher today, not because someone else told you to, but because you know you can. Because the person you're becoming deserves a foundation that will not break. The discomfort you feel now is temporary. The discipline it teaches, permanent. And that discipline becomes your armor. Every moment you choose effort over ease, you reinforce the walls around your future. Every time you say, I'll push a little harder, you plant a flag in the ground that says, this is who I am now. That decision doesn't need applause. It needs consistency. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be honest. When you fall short, own it, but then get up and raise the line again, because that's what strength does. It doesn't avoid weakness. It outgrows it. Comfort will always call you back. It will always offer you a place to hide. But ask yourself, who do I become if I keep saying yes to that voice? Who do I let down, besides myself, if I keep choosing the easy path? And more importantly, who could I become if I chose pressure instead? If I let the fire refine me instead of avoiding the heat, that answer is not found in words. It's found in action. One day, one decision. One higher standard at a time. So raise the bar, set the stone, and start building a life that holds, because when the storm comes, and it will, you won't be afraid. You'll be ready. When you change your standards, you change your identity. A man doesn't truly change when he switches jobs, buys new clothes, or moves to another city. Those things may shift the scenery, but they don't touch the soul. Surface change can create the illusion of growth. But real transformation begins when you raise what you will no longer accept from yourself. When you stop asking, what do I want, and start asking, what will I never tolerate again? That's when everything begins to shift. You don't step into a better life by reaching higher. You step into it by refusing to sink to the level you once lived at. You don't rise because you add more dreams. You rise because you raise your minimums. At the core of change is not ambition, it's refusal. The moment you draw a line in the sand and declare, never again will I live below this, you begin the true work of reinvention. That line may be invisible to others, but it carves deep into your character. It separates who you were from who you are becoming. It changes your posture, your voice, your habits, your presence. You no longer move from pressure or performance, you move from principle. And with every decision that honors that line, your identity sharpens. You begin to look in the mirror and recognize yourself not for who you were, but for who you've chosen to be. This change doesn't need a crowd. It doesn't require a ceremony. It happens in quiet moments of decision. When you delete a contact who drains you, when you show up on time not because anyone's watching, but because you said you would. These decisions stack. They harden into integrity, and over time, they reshape you, not by force, but by alignment. And then, something even more powerful happens. The world adjusts. The world may not notice at first, but it always catches up. People feel your new standard. Without needing to be told, they start treating you differently, not because you demanded respect, but because your behavior now reflects someone who respects himself. You don't have to explain your boundaries. They're built into your energy. You don't have to announce your priorities. They're evident in your consistency. Life meets you at the level of your standards. The higher they rise, the more life stretches to match them. Imagine this. A farmer once sold spoiled crops. Not because he was a bad man, but because it was easier. No one really cares, he told himself. Good enough is enough. But one season, something in him changed. He decided that every piece of fruit, every vegetable he sold, would now meet a higher standard, his own standard. He lost a few buyers at first. The ones who came for quick and cheap left. But he didn't fold, he doubled down. He refined his soil, he inspected every harvest, and a year later his name became synonymous with excellence. Not because he chased more, but because he refused less. Now ask yourself, what identity have you accepted because it was convenient? What habits have you kept alive, not because they serve you, but because they're familiar? There's a version of you that exists just beneath your current standard. Stronger, sharper, more deliberate. But that version doesn't emerge when you change your goals. It emerges when you change your requirements. When you say, this is no longer who I am, not out of shame, but out of honor. The version of you that lets things slide, that skips what matters, avoids hard conversations, entertains distractions, apologizes for wanting more, that version may have been useful once. It may have helped you survive, but now it's the weight keeping you from flight, and it won't leave until you tell it to, until you say no more, until you live that truth so consistently that it becomes identity, not effort. Don't wait for life to hand you a new beginning. Create it by declaring what's no longer allowed. You don't need a reinvention plan. You need a raised standard. You need to name the behavior that is now beneath you, not because you're better than others, but because you're better than who you used to be. That shift isn't about arrogance, it's about accuracy, about deciding that what once felt acceptable now feels foreign. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It happens in repetition, in waking up every day and defending your new baseline, especially when it's easier to slip back into the old one, in saying no when yes would avoid conflict, in saying yes to the discipline your future demands, even when today's emotions scream for comfort. Every time you honor your new standard, you teach yourself who you are, and that truth hardens, not into rigidity, but into resilience. Real change is not a loud announcement, it's a quiet rebellion against the life you no longer accept, against the excuses you've outgrown, against the version of yourself who once believed good enough was enough. And when you live that rebellion long enough, consistently enough, the world will respond, not with applause, but with alignment. New opportunities will match your energy, new relationships will mirror your values, and your name, spoken or not, will carry the weight of someone who means it. You want to reinvent yourself? Don't change your vision, change your requirements. Decide what is now beneath you. Live that truth until it no longer feels like a choice, but simply who you are. Because real power doesn't come from what you pursue, it comes from what you refuse to tolerate. And once you make that decision, your life won't just change, it will never go back. If you hold the line long enough, your life will catch up to your standard. The world doesn't change the first time you raise your standard. It doesn't immediately reward you for wanting more or trying harder. It doesn't rearrange itself just because you drew a line and said, this is who I am now. No, the world tests you. It waits. It pushes back. It throws storms, distractions, and silence. It watches to see if you'll hold the line or if you'll fold the moment things get hard. Most people fold. Most people raise their standard in a burst of energy, then shrink when results don't show up right away. That's why most people stay stuck, not because they didn't want it, but because they didn't defend it. There is a difference between setting a standard and protecting one. Anyone can raise the bar for a moment. Anyone can declare a new identity in the flush of motivation. But the test is in what happens when nothing around you changes, when the crowd doesn't notice, when your energy dips, when pressure creeps in from every angle. That's when most people go back. That's when the old comfort starts whispering again, telling you, it's not worth it. No one's watching. You've done enough. And if you haven't anchored yourself to something deeper than the moment, you'll believe it. But those who hold the line, especially when it's hard, those are the ones who win. The ones who keep showing up when no one's clapping. The ones who do the right thing when shortcuts are everywhere. The ones who don't bend their values just because bending would make things easier. These people don't just flirt with greatness, they become it. Not because they're louder, not because they're luckier, but because they lasted. Success favors the ones who keep going long after others have quit. Success is not an event, it's a pattern. It's not about having a high moment of clarity. It's about living that clarity in the middle of chaos. The world respects consistency far more than intensity. The world will not rise for your ambition, but it will eventually respect your resolve. If you defend your standard day after day, hour after hour, eventually life has no choice but to shift. The people who doubted you will take notice. The same world that tested you will begin to adjust to you. Imagine this: a lighthouse stands tall on the edge of the sea. The wind howls, waves crash, storms rage, but the lighthouse doesn't yell back. It doesn't flinch, it doesn't flicker. It just shines day after day, night after night, unmoved, unshaken, unchanged. That's what your standard has to become. Not reactive, not emotional, fixed. Your integrity, your discipline, your code, they are your light. And if you hold them strong enough, long enough, people will find their way by them. They will start to trust what you represent, not because of what you say, but because of what you never fail to do. So now ask yourself, have you only been strong when it's easy? Have you stuck to your principles only when they felt good? Or have you abandoned your standard the moment life pushed back? That's the measure. That's the difference between a standard and a slogan. Slogans crumble, standards hold. A standard is a promise you make with your actions, not just your words. And when you protect that promise fiercely, it begins to build something unshakable within you. You want change? Prove you mean it, not once, but every single day. Prove it when you're tired. Prove it when it's raining. Prove it when no one texts you back, when the scale doesn't move, when the opportunities go to someone else. Prove it in the quiet, in the frustration, in the delay. Because your future is watching. Your future isn't waiting to see if you'll make a big move. It's waiting to see if you'll stay the course when everything in you wants to turn back. This is the secret most people miss. You don't get what you raise, you get what you defend. The bar you set only matters if you guard it, if you treat your new standard like it's non-negotiable, like your life depends on it. Because in many ways it does. Your life will not rise beyond the standard you protect. Every time you let it slip, just this once, you send a message to yourself, this is negotiable. And that message weakens you, even if the world never sees it. But when you refuse to lower your line, when you train yourself to rise above excuses, to endure through resistance, to keep showing up, even when there's no guarantee, you become different. Your presence changes. You start to carry weight, not just in your words, but in your walk. And people feel it. The world feels it. Raise the bar. Then guard it with your life. Defend it when you're tired. Protect it when you're tempted. Reinforce it when you're doubted. Because that standard, it becomes the ground you stand on, the compass you follow, the anchor you hold to in every storm. And when you live like that long enough, life stops testing, it starts following. If there's one truth to carry forward, it's this. Your life doesn't rise with luck, it rises with standards. When you refuse to accept less than your best, when you commit to excellence even when no one's watching, everything begins to shift. The world responds to those who demand more from themselves. So raise the bar, hold the line, and never shrink to fit a smaller life. Your future is waiting. Make sure it meets the strongest version of you.